Good afternoon and welcome. So excited to be joining you. I am your host this afternoon. My name is DJ at Large, and over the next coming weeks, Asisa Foundation will be helping you to build a relationship with your money through the L Plus Earn Consumer Financial Education Program, our hashtag across social media and in the chat box is hashtag secure the bag. And today is our second webinar, and it's all about saving and investing. In the meantime, drop me a message in the chat box at the bottom. Let me know, where are you currently watching from? And of course, use the hashtag secure the bag. Where are you currently tuned in from? Where are you? And use the hashtag secure the bag. There is the chat right at the bottom. Click it. Let me know where you are currently located. Once again, I'm in Joburg in Parktown. There's a beautiful view and I'm in such a good mood. So I'm good. Where are you guys located? I want to read a couple of your comments. Let me see where people are located right now. I see Mulato says, I'm out in Hatfield in Pretoria. Quite a lot of people from there. Patience says, I'm out in Pretoria, in Hillcrest, Pretoria. Luvoyo says, hashtag secure the bag. I'm out in East London. Tembe Iso says, I'm also out in Hatfield. I'm seeing Bloemfontein. I'm seeing Kings Williamstown. People are all over the show. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We definitely do appreciate it. So much to look forward to in terms of today's webinar, some exciting things to look forward to. So firstly, remember to visit the L Plus Earn website, which is www.lplusearn.org.za for access to some great financial resources, such as today's recording of this webinar, which will be available next week, Wednesday. And if you have any issues, any concerns, please do stop us an email at sarah@groundedmedia.co.za. That's sarah@groundedmedia.co.za. Talking about last week's webinar, I would like to announce our 9 winners from last week. People got really, really lucky. So in terms of our top 3 winners for chats and for comments, these are our 3 winners. Mulatelo, Mukhaladi, Katleho, Mulelekau, and Lerato Ntatiso. Ooh, shine. Our other top 3 winners for top session engagement. That's Lisejo Dinake, Michelle Nube, and Isaac Dube, City Shine. And our top 3 winners for pre and post surveys. So those are the polls. That's Anina Kutsia, Muleko Mkwenazi, and Ntati Ramba. City Shine. If you would like to win this week, engage with me in the chat box, ask questions, comment, participate in the polls. That's how you can win. So in terms of webinars, we had our first one last week on budgeting. If you missed it, get onto the L Plus Earn website. We still have 5 more interactive webinars to come, including today's one, right? So put these dates in your diary and set a Friday reminder. We will be covering saving, investing, entrepreneurship, managing credit and work readiness. So over the next 5 weeks, we'll be helping you to build a relationship with your money. We started with budgeting, and today it's all about saving and investing. Of course, we'll also be joined by 2 special guests later on. Let me give them a quick virtual high five. So that's Pumla Randela and Mary J. Furey. Where are the ladies? Let me see the ladies. Let me see some of their faces. Where are the ladies? I want to do a little bit of a virtual high five with them. There I see Mary as well. Where's Pumla? I'm looking for Pumla. Pumla, where are you? Would love to do that virtual high five. Maybe she's having issues with the camera. That's okay. I know she's going to do the virtual high five. She can hear my voice. Mary, are you ready for that high five? Right? 3, 2, 1. Oh, there's Pumla as well. Let's do that virtual high five. I love that energy. So the ladies will be joining me later on and sharing their insights on saving and investing. So before we get started and we talk about saving, about investing, I've got a random money question for the audience, right? I want to know, if your money could speak, think it would say about you, right? So remember to use the hashtag secure the bag. If your money could speak, what would it say about you? If my money could speak, right? Firstly, it would say, you are handsome, bruh. You are very handsome. Okay, nileli complexion, yeah. But my money would really say, you've done very well. You've been saving, you've been investing, you've been sticking to your budget. And sometimes you're a bit too stingy. Sometimes you must spend a little bit. Spend within the budget, but just a little bit. So that's what my money would say. What would your money say about you? Fortune says Andizi and puts a crying emoji. Oh, man, I'm loving this. Let me see somebody else saying, I love you. You're managing the money really, really well. That's one comment. Kanye Sina says, girl, what are you doing? Where are we? Hashtag secure the bag. Let me see another one. Rasibe says, committed, hashtag secure the bag. So it's a mixed bag of things that money is saying. Some is good, some is bad, some is a little bit tricky. So much to look forward to in terms of today's webinar. It's all about saving and investing, right? So let's get into it, right? So what is saving and investing, right? What's the difference between the two? I think this is a great place to start, right? Saving and investing are different, but they have one common thing, right? Which is both of them are linked to a goal, right? So let's start with the differences. When you save money, you save with the intention to spend, right? So saving is usually short-term in nature, where the objective may be to preserve your money. So with savings, there's lower interest rates, which means there's lower returns, there is a lower risk, you have immediate access to your money. When we talk about saving, it's short-term and usually it's less than 5 years. When you save, you can put your money into a savings account, a money market account, a flexi or a fixed deposit account. That's everything you need to know about saving, right? With investing, it's a little bit different, right? You invest with the intention to earn, right? Very different. There's an intention to earn. And investing is about the medium to long term, where the objective here is, to grow your money through compound interest and to acquire income generating assets. So when we talk about investing, it's about high returns because there's a high interest rate. There is a higher risk. Because of these high returns, there is a delay in getting some of your funds and penalties. So you can't get your money very, very quickly. When we talk about investing, as I said, it's medium to long term, which means it's more than 5 years. And you can invest in a range of things, right? You can invest in shares, in exchange traded funds, in unit trusts, in property, in livestock, even in cryptocurrencies, right? So both saving and investing have to be linked to a goal, right? That's the common thing between the two, but they are different. They are not the same thing, right? So in terms of saving and investing, one thing that's really, really important, you need to have both savings and investments. You have to have both. They need to be linked to a goal, and that goal could be short-term, it could be a medium-term goal, it could be a long-term goal. So your bank savings account or your money market account is good for the short-term goals, right? So you might be building an emergency fund, you might want to go on a holiday. That's what a short-term goal is all about. And your bank savings account or your money market account is great for that. And then your unit trusts, your exchange traded funds, your tax-free savings account, those are good for your medium to long-term goals, such as retirement. Perhaps you want to start to build wealth, you want to build up a deposit for a property. Then we're now talking about medium to long-term goals, and your unit trusts and your shares and your exchange traded funds, they are good for that type of thing, right? So in terms of investing, I want us to rewind back, right? What did I say about investing? You invest with the intention to earn, right? So you invest to grow your money, to build wealth. But I did say that because there's a higher interest rate, right? There is risk, right? So investing is risky. There's the risk that you could lose all of your money. And that's why diversifying is such an important thing, right? So what are these assets or these financial instruments? Did you hear that English? Financial instruments. Here we are now, that you could start investing in, right? So let's go through a couple of these, right? So when we talk about investing, right, you could start to invest in things like shares, which we sometimes call equity, we call them stocks. And essentially here, you are buying the shares of a company, so a piece of a company. You're becoming an owner, right? So what companies normally do is they will try and raise money, right? And they raise money by issuing shares. And these shares are issued through what we'd like to call a market, right? The stock market. So that could be something like the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. It could be something like the Cape Town Stock Exchange, right? And that's where you go to then buy shares in these specific companies. And if you buy the shares, right, then you share in the company's profits and losses, right? So there's two ways to make money in shares, right? The share price may increase, the company may give dividends. In other words, if the company does well, it makes a profit, they will share those profits with the shareholders, right? One of the examples I love to use when it comes to shares is Capitec. So I happen to be a Capitec client, and 21 years ago, in 2001, Capitec launched, right? And when they launched, a Capitec share was R1.22. R1.22. Today, a Capitec share is 2,137 Rand. So from R1.22 to 2,137. I have Capitec shares, right? So if you bought Capitec shares, right, in 2001 for 1,000 Rand, today, 21 years later, you'd have 1.75 million Rand. That's the power of investing, of compound growth, of being patient, of thinking long term, right? That's what investing in shares is all about. It's something that I absolutely love. Another thing that you could potentially invest in is something that we call bonds, right? So a bond is a financial tool that is used by government, a municipality, a state-owned enterprise, and companies to borrow money from investors. So essentially, investors can buy a bond from these types of organizations, and essentially you are giving that organization a loan, right, when you buy these bonds, and then they will need to repay that loan. So very simple example, a company could have one bond that they share, that they're selling, and this bond is 5,000 Rand, you buy the bond, they will then pay back your 5,000 Rand with interest, right? So that's what a bond is. Very, very simple to understand. Something else that you might consider investing in is property, right? So you could buy a physical property, you could rent it out, you can flip it, which means you buy it, you renovate it, and then you sell it. You can invest in property stocks or something called a REIT. A REIT is a real estate investment trust. And a REIT basically allows you to invest in different kinds of properties through a fund, right? Another thing that you could do is you could just join a property stock firm, right? So you could find people in the chat box that have already got a stock firm. You can create a stock firm and start to buy and invest in property. So property is one way that you could also do it as well. Another thing that you can consider for your investment portfolio is cash, this thing right here, right? So investing in cash could mean investing in a high interest account, such as a fixed deposit, a money market. However, right, with cash, it's usually lower risk, which means there's a lower return. So it might not be suitable for long-term investing. But when you're building a portfolio, cash needs to be there so that it's balanced, so that it's diversified, right? So I've been doing a lot of English, throwing words around, diversify, portfolio. So let me break it down for you guys. So what is a portfolio, right? So a portfolio is a collection of all the financial investments and assets. So that's your stocks, your bonds, your cash, your gold, your property. When you put them all together, we call them a portfolio, right? Then what is diversifying? Diversifying means you're buying different types of assets, not just one, right? So you've heard that thing of don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? That's what diversifying is. You diversify to reduce your risk. So instead of investing just in stocks or just in bonds or just in gold, you're spreading your money across these various assets to reduce your risk. Because if something happens with the stocks, then your money is safe with the cash, your money is safe with the gold. That's the reason why we diversify, right? And one of the ways that you can invest and diversify is through a unit trust, right? And this is how I like to explain what a unit trust is, because it's one that tends to dribble people, right? So this is how I understand a unit trust. And I think it's a simple way for you guys to remember it, right? So I want you to think of a swimming pool, right? And your money is water, right? So you, me, other investors, we're all taking our water and we're adding it into the pool. This pool is called a unit trust fund, right? And this unit trust fund, the swimming pool, is taken care of by a pool cleaner. This pool cleaner is called a fund manager, right? An investment professional. This fund manager needs to take this pool, needs to take this water, needs to take this unit trust fund, and they need to buy different types of assets. So they will buy shares, they will buy bonds, they will buy property, they'll put money in the money markets, they will buy securities. So essentially, they are diversifying, right? So that's how I like to see unit trusts. It's such a simple way to see it. It's visual as well, which is really, really great. So if you then invest your money, your water, into a unit trust fund, you get something called a unit, right? So an investor gets X amount of units based on how much money you pour into that pool, right? So let's say a unit is 20 Rand and you invest 100 Rand, right? You get me? So a unit is 20 Rand, you invest 100 Rand, you will get 5 units, right? So go back, think about the pool example. Your money is the water. You are adding water into the pool, which is the trust fund, and the funds are then invested. And then you can then get units based on how much money or how much water you've then poured into that pool. Pretty simple example. So that's how I understand a unit trust. And I hope you're gauging it as well, because it's quite visual, right? So in terms of these unit trusts and the units that I've been discussing, there's different types of ways to make money. So you might be thinking, okay, I've poured my water into this pool. I now have my units. Where do I benefit? Where's the upside, right? So how does my investment grow within a unit trust fund? And there's different ways it can happen. So let's go back to this unit example. So if you have your units, which are 20 Rand, you invested 100 Rand, you now have 5 units. There's 3 ways that you could benefit, right? The 3 ways that your investment could grow. There's something called capital gain, there's something called dividends and interest. Capital gain means that the trust fund, right, the pool is doing well, right? So the unit price increases. So if the unit price was 20 Rand for each of these, it's now moved up to 25 Rand. Your total investment is now 125. So it's no longer 20, they're now 25 Rand. You have 5 of them, right? The other way that it can also increase is dividends, right? So the pool is doing really, really well. So for each unit that you own, you earn a dividend, right? And the last way is that you could earn interest. And the interest is basically dependent on your pool cleaner. Where did your pool cleaner put this money, right? And can you earn some interest, right? So those are the ways that you could basically benefit or your investment can grow in terms of a unit trust. Another one that also dribbles people, just dribbles, confuses people, is something called an exchange traded fund, right? It's another thing that you could potentially invest in. This is the definition of an ETF, right? The definition is ETFs are a basket of shares, bonds, or securities, typically replicating an index, but sold as one investment. I'm not gonna lie, it's confusing. There's baskets of things, there is replicating an index, there is one investment. So let me break it down for you guys once again, right? Something visual and simple. I want you to think of an ETF like a cake, right? So I like carrot cake, right? And your carrot cake has various ingredients. Your carrot cake will have flour, it'll have baking powder, it'll have sugar, it'll have cinnamon, there'll be milk, there'll be vanilla essence. So the ingredients are what make this cake, right? So when we go back to the definition of ETFs, right? The definition says a basket of shares, bonds, and securities. Those are the ingredients of the cake, right? Then the definition says replicating the index. What does that mean? That means that the price of your ingredients in your cake, they go up and down, right? So if the price of flour or sugar goes up, the price of the whole cake changes. Does that make sense, right? So I'll go back to what I've just said to you. replicating the index. It's one of the definitions. What does that mean? That means that when you think of your cake that's got all these individual ingredients, if the price of your ingredients change, the price of the cake will change. If the price of the ingredients goes up, the price of the entire cake goes up. That's why you see it as one investment. Does that now make sense? So ETFs are baskets of shares, bonds, or other securities, the ingredients in a cake, typically replicating an index. That means the price of these individual ingredients goes up and down, but it's sold as one investment. So you don't buy the individual ingredients, you buy the entire cake, right? And an ETF is another way to get some diversity, you know, because there's different types of ingredients in this ETF, in this cake, right? So that's how I like to define what an ETF is. Pretty simple. Something else to consider when we talk about investing is investing for retirement, right? So this is about the long term, right? And the idea is that at retirement, you want to maintain the lifestyle you had prior to retirement, but now you're getting a little bit older, so now you need to consider added health and medical costs, right? So it's really important that you start investing in your retirement as early as possible, right? So that you can benefit from compounding growth. So the moment you start working, definitely start to save towards your retirement. And I know a lot of experts tend to encourage us to save 15% of our salary towards retirement. And hopefully Mary J later on will give us better advice in terms of that, right? And you can invest in something called an RA, which is a retirement annuity, or something that is employer-based, which is pension or provident fund. And what's really important is if you get a job and you resign or you get retrenched or you get fired, it is important to preserve your retirement savings. So you need to either transfer them to your new employer, or perhaps you can transfer them into an RA. Do not cash out your money and start eating it, right? So investing is really important, particularly when it comes to retirement as well. Another thing that tends to come up when we talk about investing is scams. Oh, the scams are so tiring. So I've got a couple of red flags that you guys need to look out for when you start investing, right? So one of the red flags is you are promised a lot of money in a short space of time. So this person is saying, give me 1,000 Rand today, and next week you'll get 10,000 Rand. It does not sound right? So there's definitely a red flag. Another red flag is they may ask you to recruit other people, right? So all of a sudden now you're DMing me, DJ at large, you want to throw me into this thing, something ain't right? The next thing that is another red flag is most of the time with scams, there's no transparency. You don't know what you're investing in. You don't know who the person is that you were talking to. The website just doesn't make sense. On social media, the handles are just all over the place. Like things just don't make sense, right? So there's no transparency. But also when it comes to scams, what I've noticed is you need to trust your gut feeling. A lot of people that have been scammed, they always say, ish, something wasn't right, but still I've put my money in there, right? So those are a couple of red flags that you guys should be looking out for when it comes to scams. And of course, a really important thing to note is do not share your personal information, such as your address, your banking details, your PINs, your passwords with random people on social media. Do not click on links claiming to be from banks, from investment companies, stuff that was sent via SMS, via email. Please be careful when it comes to these types of scams. It's a really important thing. So let's keep it moving. Let's keep going, right? So it's time for an interview. So you know how I love to speak, right? But I've got to give other people an opportunity to say something as well, right? So we've got a very special lady, right? So we introduced her earlier on. She had a big, beautiful smile. She gave us these types of high fives, which I absolutely love. She happens to be an entrepreneur. She's very smart. Earlier on, she was telling us that she was busy lecturing, so she knows quite a lot. Her name is Phumla Randela. Phumla, where are you? We're looking for you. Where are you? Where are you, Puna? We want to see your big, beautiful face, your big, beautiful smile. We want to interact with you because this will give us an opportunity to interact with another young person who is interested in saving and investing. They've gone through the journey. They know what the challenges are. So we're going to be having that chat with Pumla. Pumla, can you hear me? Can you see me? Where are you? Yes, Pumla, how are you doing? Are you well?
I'm okay. I'm well. I'm at University of Joburg as we speak. I'm sitting at the tourism and hospitality restaurant.
Yeah, I heard today that you were busy lecturing, which is such an interesting thing. Pumla, thank you so much for your time. I'm very curious to know a little bit about your savings and investment journey. I mean, you are an entrepreneur, and I mean, you're the founder and CEO of Lushaba Wealth Solutions, and of course, Randela Wines. I hope after this we can share a little bit of a glass together. But let me be serious. I'd like to know from you, right? How did you start your savings and investment journey as a young person?
I just want to quickly go back on what you just mentioned first before I answer your question. You mentioned about the bonds. In my previous life, I was responsible. I was what was the position? I forgot, but I was a specialist in the investment world, where I used to be responsible for bonds and money market payments. So I used to exchange payments and interests between banks. So when you mentioned bonds, I was like, yay!
Oh man, absolutely amazing. And of course, Pumla, do tell us about your savings and investment journey as a young person.
So fortunately, when I started working at an insurance company as a financial planner. I started working at Liberty Life. So we at least but even though that time I did not really save, however, I managed to take a funeral cover. So that's when I was exposed to the investment and saving world, where I will know what I should invest in, when I should invest, and what I shouldn't do, and what I should do. So now I will say my work experience exposed me and helped me to have knowledge in investment, saving and investment.
Yeah, that's such an interesting one that you before you were even working, you're not too sure about these things, and it's your work that led you into that. And it actually brings me to another really interesting question. It's around what motivated you to start this journey of better understanding everything, and how do you then navigate choosing multiple savings and investment platforms? Because I think that's one of the things that young people struggle with is I know saving and investment is important, but I don't know what to choose. Like, where do I even start? So, I mean, how did you navigate that?
I started very late, although I had knowledge and everything was just there. So I started after I had made a lot of mistakes in my life. You know, when you're young, you feel like, what should I invest now? Why should I waste my time in easy equities? Why should we have, why should you open an account at companies like computer shares, for an example? So I wasted a lot of money at my young age, early 20s when I started working, where I opened a lot of, and I don't know why I did that, hey? I opened a lot of clothing accounts. I had credit cards. I had a loan. Where that money that I wasted, I would have used it somewhere. Probably I was going to be a millionaire now. I think the reason why I'm explaining this is because I want people to know that uh, having clothing account is not necessary. Having a credit card is not necessary because the money that you're trying to avoid spending now, you're gonna spend when you pay back those debts that you have created. And then I think the other thing is that with my clothing account, I never used to repeat clothes. So example, I wanted where when I used to go to work, everyone would be like, wow. But month end, I was left with nothing. So reality, that time I ran away from reality. And then I realized that, you know what, I should just do me and stop impressing people. Because at the end of the day, I'm the one who's going to be paying those debts. Those people who say that I look nice, they're not going to be there. I'm the one who's going to be suffering with no food, with nothing. That time you end up borrowing money to do your hair from friends because everything is going, you're paying your debts. And that end up messing up my credit record. I could not, it was not approved because I had a Jet clothing account. Imagine you are being declined because you've got Jet clothing account. But then after Liberty, I've worked for a few companies in Investec. I even worked for SocGen. Now I believe it's been bought by ABSA, where I was an investment specialist. That's when I was exposed to investing and saving. At Liberty, I was just too gullible. I was like, oh, I'm young, who cares? And that time I should have. If I had taken a 5 million rand life cover then, probably now I was going to be paying 100 rand. I ignored it. So then I started learning that it's very important to buy shares, because at the end of the year, financial year, and you're going to be paid dividends, and then you're going to be able to spend your money. You're going to live soft with the money that you have saved and you have worked hard for. So now I know what to do better. And then I always tell people that, you know what, always ask around. And then you mentioned something very important, that some hard cash, when you save it, there's low risk, but there's low interest. So it's also better for people to be exposed to different types of savings. Also, if you have a banker, also you can find a financial advisor and ask other types of savings so that at least you know. Because most of the time, bankers, the other thing that I realized, bankers, they don't really know this savings account. Find a financial planner. They will guide you through. Google is also should be our best friend. We should also Google which top 5 companies that you can invest your money in. And also check your comments there. That should also help you knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think you've touched on such important things. I mean, you've taken me back to last week where we talk about, needs and wants and clothing accounts and all of that. And I'm so grateful that you were able to, to be honest in sharing some of your mistakes, but also in sharing some of the things that you also learned as well. The one question that came up for me, and it's one of the last questions that I have for you, is obviously you moved from having a job to now having a business. I want to know, what role did saving and investing play in that? Did you use some of your savings to then start this business?
When I started my business, funny enough, I've run out of my savings. So my savings, I withdrew my savings when I was in debt, right? So I paid off all my debts, which helped me. I don't regret that. So now when I started my business, I was debt free. So what I did, because now I did not really have a proper retainer, I had to go hard on marketing and advertising to make sure that I have money to sustain me. But after like 3 months, because the thing is with me, when I started my business, especially with the accounting firm, 3 months down the line, we had hard lockdown. So it taught me that saving is very important. Even if you're saving 50 Rand, that 50 Rand will make a difference in your life when you need it. Imagine, one thing that I've also realized is that when you borrow 500 from a friend, they will say they don't have, where else they have. So now rather save yourself from embarrassing yourself. I then, after that, when my business started doing well, I started saving. So with Vandera Wine, because we deal with sales, right? All the time when we make money, I make sure that I save it all the time because I don't want to repeat the same mistake that I've repeated. We don't know actually if we're going to have another hard lockdown.
No, that definitely makes sense. Pumla, thank you so much for sharing. Another person that I'm also keen and interested to bring into the conversation is Mary J. Faree. She's a registered financial practitioner, a member of FPI, and she's super talented. She can do everything and anything. And apparently she knows everything about money too. Mary J. Faree, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me and for that warm introduction.
Lovely. So you're the expert in the room. We definitely need you. There's already a lot of comments and questions in the chat box that we will, of course, get to. But I'm keen to know, as a young person starting out, learning about managing your spending, trying to save and to invest, and also maintaining and managing stuff at home, sometimes it can be overwhelming for young people. So, how can we overcome this feeling of feeling so overwhelmed by everything?
I want to come back to something that Pumla said, which really stood out for me, which is do me, focus on yourself. And what I mean by that is, what do you want? What are your dreams and visions for your life? I think it's so easy to be overwhelmed because the world tells us you have to save for this, you have to do that, you need to own these things. But if we come back to ourselves, and this is where I'm not the expert, you're the expert of yourself and your life, and you do you, and you focus on your goals first, then it's much easier to pick investments later on, because those goals, the visions you have for your life are going to determine where you save, where you invest, and what you want your money to do for you.
It's such an important thing to know who you are as a starting point when we talk about saving and investing. And I'm just thinking about the days when I was still in university, and I didn't know much about saving and investing. I felt like there was too much to try to grasp and understand. And I guess this question then relates to unit trusts and ETFs. Why can those be such a great place to start if you are young and you're new into this world of saving and investing? Why are those two such a great place to start?
They're great places to start because they're not too complicated. I think a lot of people think investments have to be fancy and so technical, and that's why we get seduced into things like get-rich-quick schemes and scams. But start saving into your bank account, and then as you build up some cash and you've got the next level to take, unit trusts and ETFs are such simple ways to get involved. There's many different product providers out there, and they create the structure to help you reach your goals. So they create the systems and the mechanisms which will take you to where you want to go. So accessible, and there's a lot of choice out there as well.
Yeah, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. He doesn't save, he doesn't invest. I think he thinks he's cool, and it's definitely not cool. And one of the reasons why he was saying he doesn't save and invest is he just doesn't have the money, right? He says things are super expensive, food is expensive, transport is expensive. So Mary, what are some tips that you can share with me and the rest of the audience to find that extra bit of cash so that we can start to save and invest?
Yeah. And it's not a lie. Life costs money, right? So my approach is sort of twofold. The first thing is, where are you spending your money? And are you looking and telling your money where you want it to go? Are you spending on people, things, and experiences that add value to your life, that add meaning to your life? Because if you don't tell your money where to go, other people will. All those advertisers, all those marketers, all the stuff which says buy me now is gonna hook you in. So start looking at your spending, get honest with yourself. It can be hard, it can be difficult. My advice to people is create a money date, you know, whether that's an evening with a glass of Randella wine and a box of chocolates and a highlighter and your bank statement, and you just go through and you just get curious, like, what is going on? So what do you spot that you can cut, that you could reduce, that you could trade off? Some things are more important than other things. And then the next thing is, at a point, we've reduced as much as we can in terms of our spending. We've decided that we're spending on the most important things. Then you've got to look at generating. You've got to look at how to bring more money in, how to make grow your income. So are there ways that you can grow in your work? Can you create a side gig? You know, is there something that you can do on the side, a side hustle that can bring in some extra cash that could fuel your savings and investments?
Yeah, such important things. And once again, you and Pumla are taking us back to a budget. I mean, it's the financial compass. I mean, that's the starting point. Even before you start saving and investing, you need to know where your money is going, right? And if your expenses cannot be cut, then you need to focus on the income. So everything you've said is just touching on what we discussed last week, which is such an important thing. Now, Mary, one of the benefits of investing is obviously compound interest, compound growth. How can young people, our attendees, benefit from compound growth?
Staying the course. So you don't benefit from the compounding if you don't give it time. It takes time. And that's why there's so much advice out there saying, start young, start now, because you have lots of time ahead of you. You know, I've worked with clients who come to me at late stages of their life, and it's so much harder because they have to save so much more because their money can't work as hard for them. So the compounding really happens when you have time to leave your money invested so that your money can make money, and that money can make money, and you end up having, you know, money that you made however many years ago, making you more money in the future.
Yeah, and it takes me all the way back to that Capitec, example that I
Yes.
gave earlier on of money just growing and compounding. And I mean, that's 21 years, which is such a long time. But investing is about the long term, which is something that I kept mentioning. One last thing, Mary, that I want to pose to you is we spoke a bit about retirement, right? And that
Yes.
when you're a young person and you're changing jobs or you've been retrenched or you've been fired, you should, stay away from cashing out your retirement. I'd love for you to emphasize this of just how important it is to not cash this money.
Yeah. So it hooks back to what you were talking about with the compounding. You take that money now, that money is going to stop working for you. That money is going to be spent and you're going to be starting all over. You're going to be a little bit older and you're going to have to work a lot harder because now that money isn't there to work hard for you. So if you change jobs, preserve that money, keep it working for you. It's your best option. And then start over as well. Continue to contribute, continue to build.
Some fantastic insights from you, Mary. Thank you so much. Please feel free to ask us some questions. So get into the chat box. Remember to use the hashtag secure the bag. What are some questions that you have for myself, for Mary, and for Pumla as well? We would love to take some of your questions around saving and investing. So in terms of those questions, send them along. I'm going to quickly open up my chat. I want to see what some of these questions are. I'll bring Mary in, and of course, I'll also bring in Pumla. So ladies, in terms of some of the questions that are currently coming up from people, right? One of the questions, which I think is really, really interesting, and I think Mary might be able to help us with this one, is somebody wants to know here, I think it's Tabo. Tabo says, I want to save for an emergency, right? How much should I save and where should I put the savings? I think it's a really interesting question. Mary, this individual wants to save for an emergency. How much should they save and where should they put that savings?
Right, so that's a tricky one to answer without knowing what your life costs and how much you have available to save. But the best place to save for an emergency is probably somewhere where you can access the money easily. So a bank savings account. And how much you save, the rules of thumb which say, 3 months worth of income up to 6 months worth of income, and how much you're able to save towards that will depend on what you're willing to prioritize in your budget to get there. But ideally save as much as you can, give yourself that buffer, because as we've experienced in the past 2 years, the whole world can shut down and you need some cash to see you through that.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And once again, it goes back to the thing that personal finance is personal, right? So such an interesting thing. Pumla, there's actually a very interesting question that I think you'd be the perfect person to answer, because now I'm thinking about your clothing accounts, I'm thinking about Jet, right? So Asanda says, how do you stop yourself from impulse purchases, right? If you're a spontaneous person in terms of your personality. So, in terms of those impulse purchases, what are some tips and tricks that you might have for Asanda?
Number one, ask yourself, is it very important to buy clothes on credit and pay later when you've worn the clothes? Or sometimes when you don't even want to wear the clothes? No, it's not. So rather create proper credit to build your credit record instead of having a clothing account to build. I think most of the time when we are still at university, we get food and people always say, no, open a clothing account is going to build your credit record. No, can you afford that? No. Why would you want to why would you want to wear clothes on credit, whereas you can save it? Most of the clothes that I bought on credit, I did not even repeat the clothes. Isn't that waste of money? So go find what's important to build your credit record. Sometimes you can even buy a house without having any credit background, and you maintain your bond, and then there you're maintaining your credit on massive important things, not credit card. So credit card, most of the time, I used to use my credit card to buy food. Is it important? No. I took a 20,000 credit card. I end up paying 45,000. Is it worth it? No, it's not, because I had defaults. Remember, I had things all over the show, trying to impress people, do things for you. If you cannot afford, leave it. If you're buying things on credit, know that that time you cannot afford, leave it.
Absolutely love that. To wrap it up, and it's actually a question for Mary because it keeps coming up in the chat. It's about scams, right? And investing. How do I know that a specific investment isn't a scam? Is there a way to know that it isn't a scam, to sort of double check, maybe a database of some sort?
So first of all, it's a registered financial services provider, because any sort of investment needs to be offered by a regulated financial services provider, and the FSCA website does allow you to search for those. That's the first and most important question, because a lot of the scams, they are not. They are people that are fly by night and taking advantage. And you've got protection if it is an investment by a regulated financial services provider and something goes wrong, because we do have an authority that you can go to, ombuds you can approach in that space. Hope that helps.
Yeah, that definitely helps. And another question around student debt, and is it still wise to save? I think it's this idea of having student debt and you're trying to save, but sometimes that balance that young people have is, what do I prioritize? Do I prioritize trying to pay off my debt, or do I actually save? Mary, what tends to come up when you're talking to young people and to clients in general?
It's a tricky one, and my answer is do both, because otherwise you could get stuck in that cycle. If you're only paying the debt and you haven't got some kind of savings, then when you have a crisis or you have something that you need savings for, you go back into debt and you stay in debt. The ratio of how much you save, that's going to be different for different people, but try and save and pay your debt. And maybe that's also the time where you're looking at increasing your income and finding other ways to earn, so you can do that faster and pay down that debt faster and grow that emergency fund quicker.
I saw Pumla also nodding as well, and I agree with you. I think that's definitely one. We've got so many questions, so many comments. So I'm going to ask our speakers to dive into the chat and to just start interacting with people, talking to them, giving them, some of your experiences in terms of money, while we quickly also try and wrap up today's session. But thank you so much for all your questions. And of course, Mary and Pumla were absolutely amazing in terms of, being able to guide us in terms of saving and investing and all of the things that they've had to go through, which I think is absolutely amazing. We hope that we've assisted you. Get into the chat, use the hashtag secure the bag. So let's focus on week 2 activities and reflections, right? So remember to register on the Zalto platform if you would like to win some goodies and also participate in our challenge. So we would love for you guys to put together a short creative video about what you've learned on this topic of saving and investing, right? Then share it with us. So it could be a song, could be a poem about saving and investing. You could be a rapper, could be a dialogue. You could act, spire type of vibe, but keep it to a maximum of 3 minutes and you could stand a chance to win 280 Zlato. And of course, you need to register to be able to submit your video. So all the details are on the screen. They will also be shared with you guys via email. Essentially, you need to fill in all your personal details. You need to create an account, upload your profile picture. You need to complete this micro task, which is the challenge we've just spoken about. Submit it, and of course, you could earn some Zlato from us. You can use it now. You can save the Zlato, and perhaps you might want to take me out on a date using that Zlato. So in terms of where you can actually utilize it, a whole host of places. You can use it to buy airtime, electricity. You could go to Deponiers, to KFC. You could buy some courses on Udemy. You can go to PEP. You can go to Click. So there's so many ways that you can actually spend it, which is absolutely amazing. So those are the activities for week 2. Really, really important. Once again, register on the Zalto platform. Each week, prizes will be awarded to 9 students who are actively participating in webinars and polls. We will reshare all of those links with you. In fact, if you go into the chat box, we will share them there. And remember, for resources for the webinar recordings, visit the L Plus Earn website, which is www.lplusearn.org.za. My name is DJ at Large. Thank you for joining the L Plus Earn Consumer Financial Education Program Webinar 2 on saving and investing. And of course, thank you so much to Pumla, to Mary, to the Assisa Foundation team. Next week, we get deeper and deeper into investing part 2. See you then. Until then, good afternoon and happy Friday.